Hello and welcome to the D3 podcast. This is your host, Matt, joined as always by Sam, Kevin, and John. It has been a long time, and by long time, I mean like a week since you've seen us. It's been 2 weeks since you've seen my brother and I. And let me just say, Kevin, Sam, I'm very angry at both of you for sending me to Cleveland. It took me a long fucking time to get back. You assholes. How dare you send me to the worst city in the goddamn world?
Hey,
I
hey,
had
man.
that.
Hey, you should have brought Drummond with you at the same time because they're not going to play his ass.
Yeah, that's fair. How's it going, boys?
It's going. I had my car not start earlier today that I was trying to get back into the city with, so it was weird. It was weird. It was a chaotic day.
That's fun. That's fun. You gotta love those Chicago winters. Sam, how about you?
Hey, we're vibing. We got the Nugs shirt on. We repping the gang now, finally, because we're doing well for once. Jamal Murray, 50 points. Having a great time. We're having a great time.
John, how's your dog?
My dog is great. He's living it up, loving it, laughing it. He's doing great.
That's all that matters from the intern. Why don't we get right into it, boys? We've got some NBA updates coming at you. Recently, Draymond Green called out the NBA for having double standards for treatment of players, specifically bringing up James Harden. Sam, why don't we get into this? Do you think that there's really a big double standard for what's going on with like trade talks and whatnot, or do you think Draymond's just kind of talking out his ass?
I think he has a valid point because I'm pretty sure it did happen to him at some point in his career as well. I think the James Harden situation is a little different just because he was kind of just being very whiny for being like he's a very talented player and being whiny. So it's like you're just on a whole different scale. But it's like for Drummond, who's still trying to prove himself as being as a quote unquote elite player, it's just kind of annoying, right? We see with Harrison Barnes when he was in Dallas, they literally got tapped on the shoulder on the bench and was like, "Hey, you're getting traded. You can't play anymore." And he's like, "Oh, okay." Just had a towel and just vibing back here. And I'm like, yeah, I just find that it's very annoying when they just don't get the proper communication. DeMar DeRozan got the same thing when he was in Toronto. It's some sort of double standard, but at the end of the day, I guess it's still a business. Like it's as much you want to call it a brotherhood, it's by player to player. But when it comes to team, it's we can trade your ass anytime. So he has a point, but I mean, I think the degree is still a different scale.
John, Kevin, are you on the same page as Sam, or are you thinking a little bit different?
No, I think there definitely is a double standard, but I don't think that's anything new in my mind. You know, like I think people like KD, LeBron, like the top tier players like Harden, and like those guys have always been like this of like being like talking about like, oh, I won out of this, and then kind of getting it done. Again, I don't think that's anything new. I think Draymond's just kind of calling it out now. And you can look at it at what he says and be like, yeah, that is the case. But I like, what do we do about that? Is there any solution to this? Do we need to have a solution to this, or is that just kind of the way it is? And like you say, yeah, that's kind of the way it is because they're the top 5 players in the NBA, so they can kind of complain and get something to happen. I don't know. Like I feel like it's a non-issue here, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I just really don't think there's really a big deal with it. I don't know about you, John.
I get it. I think that like it's definitely the double standard as far as like who the public and the media will hold accountable for seeing the contract to its conclusion. Because if a player does ask out, a lot of the time, unless it is like, an older player that's been in a bad situation. If Bradley Beal asked out today, no one would crucify him for it. Everyone would be like, yeah, get out of there. We hate that you're on this shitty team. But, there's a lot of times like what we saw with James Harden, and I'm sure there's other situations that aren't coming to mind where like a guy wants to take his own career into his hands and he gets a lot of shit for it and his reputation gets damaged. But it usually does end up okay for those players. No one talks about Anthony Davis being a little shit in New Orleans the last year that he was there. A year from now when Brooklyn is really like either has already won a championship or is about to gear up to win a championship. No one's going to talk about James Harden being a bitch leaving Houston. Like these things like come and go in waves. I do believe that like the double standard is there, and I don't know the solution to it, but I understand why he's frustrated because everything he said I think is valid. I just am not sure what the solution is, but if there is one, I don't know. I hope he can figure it out.
I have a feeling it's more so just like he's just bitching about reaction of other people and like fan bases. Because like I think most of the time fan bases are the ones who's just like, oh, James Harden's being such a fucking bitch right now and like not playing for the team, even though he's still on the Houston Rockets and whatnot. But it's just like I think it's more reactionary than anything. So like with that being said, I would probably say like there really isn't anything that you can do about it because you're basically telling people, hey, don't bitch about this. It's just like, oh yeah, sure, why not?
So I guess my question to you guys would be, should players just play out their contract out of respect for the organization because they're offered such a big contract, or do you think there's no obligation at all at that point?
No, I don't think that. I personally don't believe that, like, because again, like that's the double standard, right? Because then you have to, what Draymond would want for people to do at that point is also hold the organization accountable and say, okay, then you can't trade me while I have this contract in place. And that's something that, like, you know, again, it's a difficult fix because it's really hard to hold those organizations accountable. It's a collective bargaining problem. And like the end of the day, that is something they'd have to figure out. I don't even know how they get to that solution because it would just be ownership teams giving up a lot of control that I don't think they'd be willing to give up.
They've kind of already given up a lot of control too.
It's just tricky. I basically, for me personally, I don't hold it against players for wanting to leave bad situations. But it's really tricky. It's, you know, it's worth a discussion. It's just like, I wonder what solution you can really arrive to at it. But
yeah, that's totally fair. Moving forward, Adam Silver has recently said that the NBA All-Star having this game is the right thing to do. You know, I don't know about you guys. I'm not entirely sure if I would use those words to describe what should and shouldn't happen. This sounds like a very United States capitalist ideal of like, let's open up businesses again and damn all who disagree with us. It's the right thing to do. I don't think this is the right thing to do, in my opinion. I think we've already said this before on a previous podcast, that this isn't necessarily the right move to make. Kevin, where are you with this?
I mean, I think we've hit this a couple times, but I think there's no reason to have all of your best players in one place when you're still postponing games on a regular basis. Like just this last week, we saw multiple series postponed. So clearly there's still an issue of whether it be just players coming into contact with people with COVID or whatever. Clearly there's still issues going on. So until that's fully resolved, I don't feel comfortable having, again, all your best players, all of the players that people watch to see these people play. Like I feel like that's a recipe for disaster. And if they don't try and avoid that, or at least make a lot of rules in order to make sure it's safe, I'm very worried. And I haven't seen that as much this season as we did in the bubble, obviously. But I'm very concerned right now, especially saying, like, what is this? Having the All-Star is the right thing to do. On what grounds? Like, what kind of...
Well, Kevin, if you have the opportunity to play a meaningless exhibition game with all of the best players in your league and none of them want to participate even a little bit, how could you pass that up? Are you kidding me? That's like a fucking slam dunk, baby. You know, just like the halftime show dunk contest they're going to try and sneak in. Like, that is easy as pie. We are going to give this full effort, full balls, baby. Let's go. No, it's obviously stupid. It's like fully dumb.
Hashtag
It's
free money
clear
for the
cash
NBA.
grab. Clear cash grab. It's stupid. It's the All-Star game. Who fucking cares? Like, does the NFL even play a Pro Bowl anymore? Like, no one fucking cares. It's, like, if there was ever a year to not do it, like, fucking come on. I get, like, the money, but, like, it's a recipe for disaster. Like,
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to add on. It's just it's annoying because it was like made clear that the All Star was not going to happen at the beginning of the season. Everyone agreed to that, and then like 3-4 weeks before, they say, "Hey, we can make a lot of cash. It's going to be so many millions of dollars because we have the deal with Turner." And it's like, well, you did promise like 10 days of break for a lot of these teams, such as the Lakers, who literally just went all the way, won the title. Props to them, but we see it. We see how tired they are. They're not going to play Anthony Davis. Why risk a cash strain at that point? We see the age of LeBron kind of kicking in, still playing phenomenal, almost MVP like season. But it just doesn't make sense for a lot of teams, like even the Miami Heat, who are injury play. They're going to force a lot of these players to still play. It has literally no logic to that, and it's the right thing to do. It just comes back to what Matt's point is. It's just like it's just money, which is valid. They're a business. I guess that's what it is at the end of the day. But I'm just going to jump to the next question, Matt, real quick. I just think Adam Silver is being very hypocritical on himself. I think we have a lot of praise for him because it was just not David Stern. But for me, I think we're starting into the David Stern era. And I know that's a stretch for me, but the last 7 years of David Stern were the most garbage because it's what I had to live through. We all had to live through, and it was horrendous. Adam Silver did loosen the chains. Everyone can wear whatever shoe they want, basically wear whatever they want, pre-game, post-game. But I just feel like I don't know who he's fighting for, and I know he's trying to find his balance, but I think at some point you do have to take a stance for someone. Like I think it has to make it very clear. And right now it's the player oriented, but I don't know. This season and last season, it just seemed like everything was against him. So I don't know. It just seems very hypocritical on his end.
I will say, if James Harden is not an All-Star this year, that is a full-on conspiracy from the league. That is them trying to save their best players. They said we cannot have James Harden in Atlanta this weekend. It is so unsafe for them. It's a public safety issue at that point. And that is what you should. If that happens, look out! I'm telling you, that's the league.
Give him the
Conspiracy theories left and right. Speaking of like questionable things, national anthem is being enforced to all teams in the NBA, and normally, I mean, like it's such a weird thing, like saying that it's questionable because why bother now? It wasn't necessarily enforced, and the NBA, like tons of times they've kneeled during the anthem and whatnot, and it's just like it's almost unnecessary at this point. I don't really get the need to have it. Trump's not in office, so who are you gonna what exactly are you gonna lose, I guess? John, how do you feel about the national anthem being enforced? Because I don't really care about it.
It's what the league said is they were like, yeah, this has been the rule for however we play the anthem before games. It's just the policy. It's like it's really pointless. Dallas wasn't doing it for like 10 games and literally no one noticed. Like it truly could not be more of a non-issue. No one fucking cares. Like it doesn't matter. You're not gonna go to a basketball game to like hear whatever like inspiring preteen they brought to like sing the anthem in front of this crowd. Like that's not like the highlight of your game. It's not something you're gonna remember. It adds nothing to the experience. It not being there takes nothing away from the experience. It's silly. It feels like the NBA, especially like this year, in this past couple of years, has just like had no clue how to respond to situations, and they just are like, I feel like their brains are just fried at like executive levels, and they just like don't know how to handle anything that could potentially be controversial anymore. So they just do all these crazy like half measures or crazy like extreme measures for things, and it's just like poorly thought out and needlessly like strict, except for with COVID. So
right.
it's fucking Yeah.
Listen.
It's tough.
I know exactly. Listen, NBA owners, hear me out for a second, okay? I just want you to sit down, just hear me out for a second. This is what you need to do, okay? Especially you, Dallas, because you, again, 10 games straight, nobody noticing. You get Fergie to sing the national anthem for you, and you only use her. And then eventually we get to the point of like, oh man, I don't like my ears bleeding every intro to games. Let's just not do it anymore. This is what you gotta do.
Yeah.
This is the move.
That's a pretty good plan.
This is some pretty solid strategy on my part. Just saying. Sam, I do want to move into this next thing because I know how much you're gonna love talking about this. Boston is struggling. No, reading straight from the doc. No more tea parties in Boston? Question mark. Fuck you. Why don't we go over this? What do you think's going wrong with the Boston Tea Party currently?
This team has struggled so much, and it's a real shame because of the amount of young. I could put them as superstar talent at this point because the way they compose themselves is unbelievable. Jaylen Brown has probably one of the most phenomenal, I don't even want to say comeback seasons, but I could honestly say most improved player because what he's been doing is unreal for this team. He's probably the reason why they won a lot of these games. In all honesty, Jason Tatum returning is a perfect duo. But what else do you have with this roster? You have a Kemba Walker who can drop 35 points one night and then go 2 for 14 the next night. What are we doing at this point? The point what we need is a playmaking point guard who is not a Marcus Smart. Because I'm going to be honest with you, Marcus Smart does not know how to play basketball anymore. I don't know what he's doing on this court anymore. The bag is not worth it at this point. Maybe he's just misutilized at this point because, I mean, he's last of the regiment basically for the Isaiah Thomas Celtics. RIP to our boy. And Danny Ainge is a coward and not willing to make a move when he has one of the biggest exceptions at this point. Not willing to give up any assets. He didn't do anything in the offseason. Picked up Tristan Thompson, who we thought was going to be good, completely washed. And they're still playing a 6'9" man at center. What are we doing at this point? What are we doing?
You just had to call him a coward, didn't you?
Yeah,
just had to do it. Kevin, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I really quickly, you can call Danny Ainge a million different things. I think that calling the man who tried to trade several first-round picks for the opportunity to draft Frank Kaminsky a coward is maybe a little bit off the mark. But many other names would be very fitting.
That is totally fair. Oh my God. Kevin, do you think is Danny Ainge the fall guy right now, or do you think there are other pieces that probably could have the blame?
I mean, I think Danny Ainge he's a good fall guy, but I don't necessarily think he's the right fall guy. I think, I don't know. Maybe I go back on that a little bit because I think to Sam's point, like you have this giant trade exception, one of the biggest like that we could imagine, and you don't do anything with it, and they're not doing anything to improve their team again. And they're just kind of hoping for the best, and I think that does kind of fall on Danny Ainge. So I think I'm gonna step back on what I said. I think it does fall on him. I think with a $28 million trade exception, you got to get someone. Like you got to get someone big. You have no excuse to not. Granted, I think the team isn't performing at their best either. Again, to Sam's point, Kemba Walker is one of the most inconsistent players in all of basketball right now. But he's still kind of coming off an injury. He's still like, he's not going to be KD. He's not going to jump back in and be amazing like right after injury. He's not that type of player. So I think he's getting better slowly, but he was much worse earlier. So he's improved a little bit. Tristan Thompson's still a bum. The bench is still abhorrent on the Celtics. So there's a lot more problems than Danny Ainge, but I think that's your number one right now.
Abhorrent. That is a fun new word of the day. I'm going to accept that. Way to go, Kevin. John, out of all this entire situation for the Celtics, do you think that now is the time that we need to have Taco Fall as a starter?
The real fall guy.
Shit, who cares? Yeah. They're not winning anything this year. The Celtics, the roster construction is a mess. Which is of course like that's Danny Ainge's fault. But it doesn't help that there's so many injuries. It doesn't help that Jason Tatum has said himself like he is struggling after COVID. He still is having a hard time like feeling. He's getting gassed at the end of games because his lungs are just like kind of a little bit fucked right now. He's still getting that like conditioning back. If you're the Celtics, you just have to remember like you got these two young superstar level guys. There's a lot to change, and I think it's a longer plan than they maybe accepted or expected, but. This year is kind of a wash. They're not going to do anything of importance. And next year they have to make something happen. What would have actually helped this team a lot, though, is Miles Turner, who, for some reason, Danny Ainge thought wasn't worth trading Gordon Hayward for Miles Turner. I'm sure that those 3 blocks per game would have come greatly in handy for this Celtics team. So I don't know, Danny. It's bad. They suck. I mean, they don't suck. They're a good team, but they're not going to be anything useful or good in the postseason. Like that's just how it is.
Yeah, I completely forgot about Miles Turner. That's really depressing. Not going to lie.
Yeah.
Look, speaking of really weird situations going on in different teams, something that happened recently that I was just very confused about is that DeMarcus Cousins is out of Houston. Why don't we go around the podcast really quick and just see who the best fit is going to be for him as a player? I will be the standard by saying the current outlook right now is that he is going to the Lakers. John, why don't we start with you?
I mean, I don't know. Would any team be like super helped out by DeMarcus Cousins being there? He'll end up somewhere. The Lakers, I don't even think he'll play like 5 or 10 minutes a game there. But I can see it happening. Maybe he ends up in the Raptors. They need a big guy. And they probably really miss Marc Gasol's at least like offensive facilitating and like spacing that Boogie can kind of approximate. Maybe even the Clippers. There's not like a great fit, but he'll end up somewhere. He's been all right this year. Defensively, he's nothing. He's useless. But offensively, like if you're going to play him for 15 minutes a game or something like that, he could be helpful. So maybe something like the Raptors or Clippers or something.
Sure, absolutely. Really quickly, Sam and Kevin, where do you see him going?
Europe. There's no home. I'm telling you, if you cannot stay on the court, you really don't belong to be in the NBA at this point. And it's a shame because he was probably the most dominant big man when he was in the Sacramento Kings because that's when the dead man era started dying off before Joel Embiid got the resurgence. Anthony Davis started being a real producer. But, I mean, I kind of have to go with you, man. I think the Lakers might just pick him up and then hold him until like the last second so that no one can sign him and then just dump his ass at that point because Anthony Davis will be back. But I just don't see his skill set being that useful anymore because he plays too much outside ball and it's just like I gotta go quick rant. I'm sorry, but like why are big men playing outside ball? You're huge. Like you have to play in the paint at the point. Kristaps Porzingis, you're 7'3". What are we doing? Carl-Anthony Towns, you're 7'2". What are you doing? Like why are we shooting threes? Joel Embiid, we saw him. He's not shooting 3 points as frequently, and he's now the most dominant player in the NBA, in my opinion, at this point. So DeMarcus Cousins, stop shooting threes. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, that's a great solution, honestly. Kevin, are you pretty much on the same page?
I'm not going to go to the extent that I think he should be playing Europe ball, but I think he's probably going to end up in LA, whether that's the Clippers or the Lakers. I think both of them are okay fits for him. Again, to John's point, I think like he's not someone any team is going to be excited about getting, but I think good fit for the Lakers because AD's out for a little bit. They could bring him on. He might play 15 minutes or something like that a game and have some offensive presence or something like that. That would help out in AD's absence. I think Clippers could use someone like that. I mean, the rest of that Clippers team plays pretty good defense, and he doesn't, so that's okay. I think the rest of the team can pick up his slack when he's out there. So yeah, I think probably LA.
Kevin, speaking of LA, are the Lakers still the best team in the league?
Other than maybe the Jazz, yes.
Oh, we said the Jazz, Kevin. Interesting.
As half meme, half serious. I mean, the Jazz are like when the Jazz are playing at their full capacity, I think they're probably. I hate to say it, but I think they are probably the best team. The only reason I think the Lakers aren't right now is because of those injuries, because of things like AD's health is always going to be kind of a question mark. Whereas Jazz, yeah, Rudy Gobert is also a big man, but he's been injured so much less than AD consistently. So I think having that sustainable lineup is really, really helping them a lot this year. And I think they're playing at full potential way more than the Lakers are. I mean, LeBron's LeBron. Don't get me wrong, but he's also 36. Like, the Jazz team is like 30 at max, pretty much. Like, Mike Conley's their oldest guy, I think, who is still like maybe 32. I want to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if they're both teams are healthy, Lakers are the better team, but Jazz have been basically healthy all season, and when they are, they're awesome to watch. So they're probably up there. And then 76ers are fun to watch, but definitely not the best team.
All right. Well, that was a mouthful. Sam, where are we at with the Lakers right now?
Lakers are going to be Lakers. I think we're seeing the blatant flaws, missing AD. I mean, look, when you lose your best player or second best player on your team, you're going to see a huge drop, especially when your next best player is, he's of age. He doesn't like to play defense anymore. You see him coasting. We saw it last night against the Miami Heat where he doesn't play defense that well. And he deferred the last shot to young Alex Caruso, who dinked it off the rim, and then that was game at that point. But the Lakers I think, are just coasting for the playoffs. I think we just can't. Playoff LeBron is just a different beast at that point, and I think it'll be interesting to see. As I think this is the first time we actually saw LeBron's age now. Which is weird because he's still probably second in MVP race right now. But we just can't really doubt him right now. They're not a regular season team. If they're the fourth seed, they're probably still going to crush the Utah Jazz. So, I mean, with Marc Gasol, you have the right vets on this team to actually make the right plays. So, I still have confidence, but regular season, they're probably going to take a fall.
Fair enough. And then moving to the East, John, do you think the Nets are actually finally starting to kind of come together with Kyrie accepting Harden as a point guard and whatnot? Or do you think this is sort of something that was just bound to happen?
The Nets are great. They're going to be fine. And it actually is really huge that has really clicked. Harden is an awesome point guard, and we see that in his assist totals, his general playmaking. He's scoring when he needs to, and that's still enough to get him 23 or 4 points a game or something like that. I just having those three players means you're probably in just about any game, even into the fourth quarter, as long as you're within even 12 points of the other team, you're still in the game. And that's the kind of offensive power that like LeBron said that we saw with that KD, Steph, Warriors team, where as long as those guys are on there, you're always in the game. Defensively, they're still not great. They're kind of figuring it out when they need to. I feel like they are actually going to be defensively competent almost in the playoffs, especially if they can make another move and add someone useful. If maybe Andre Roberson can be a useful defender. I know they just got him. Yeah, I know it's not awesome, but if they can make another move to get a useful big, then I think that they're a pretty safe bet to get out of the East. I really watching these guys play together has just been so much fun. I think that they are really working really well together, much better than I ever would have expected. So the Nets are interesting now, but more than
I would
as like a title threat.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like our biggest concern, I know like a couple weeks ago, was that the Nets have been losing some like big games or whatever in the past, and now it kind of seems like they're getting their shit back together, which is really great. And it's nice to see that Kyrie is able to actually like chill his ego down a little bit and able to like, give the reins to James Harden, which is nice.
Yeah, it's fun that like all the drama really has been about like the relationship between Harden and Kyrie, and everyone's just like, Kevin Durant's gonna be fine. Like, yeah, he's gonna be fine because he is. He's Kevin Durant. Like that's the he's Kevin Durant. He's gonna and once he's like fully healthy and they're all together consistently. I don't know, man. It's tricky. It's gonna be interesting. It'll be interesting. I hope we get a Nets Sixers playoff matchup. That's what I want to see. That'd be a fun one.
Yeah. That would be a lot of fun, not gonna lie. All right, so we are getting into the game of the week. This is very interesting. Was not expecting this to ever be a game of the week, but here we are. We have New Orleans versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Guys, how are we feeling about this game? Obviously, it's the game of the week. It's something that we're all excited about. I have not been excited about New Orleans for quite some time, so this is very interesting for me to see this. Sam, what are you looking forward to in this game, and who do you have as our winner?
It's tough. I'm supposed to say that your Pelicans. The Pelicans came back against the Boston Celtics right now. Very close game. It's weird because it's like it's been a while since we've heard the Milwaukee Bucks out of relevance since the offseason, and that was because Bogdanovich in the trade basically. Giannis has been. It's a shame because the season it's hard to compare points now this season because everyone averages 25 points a game, and it's like that's cool. Like that's just a norm at that point. So like Giannis' stats don't like blow me away. But I mean, Giannis is doing Giannis things. 28, 10, and 6. Like I mean, what more can you ask from a back-to-back MVP? I think biggest thing, Chris Middleton. I think he's actually showed more of the clutch factor. We're actually seeing Giannis defer to Chris Middleton, which I actually like a lot better because I rely on Chris Middleton's shot more than a Giannis shot or Giannis drive-in at that point. Like Giannis screen and roll with Chris Middleton is the perfect like combo threat because dish it to Giannis can cut it in, and that's game at that point too. Drew Holiday has been a clear was a good pickup. Dumping Eric Bledsoe, who is probably it's just not a good point guard at all because he plays as a true scorer, and yet he still doesn't do either of them for the Pelicans either. And I think that Drew Holiday was actually a great pickup, but they're just a quiet giant for me right now. And my thoughts on the Pelicans, horrendous. I'm telling you, Brandon Ingram needs to get traded right now because this is his highest value, and I don't think it's getting them. They're getting them wins, but when I say the Pelicans, Kevin, what did I tell you last week? When I say the Pelicans, I want Zion. That is it. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's evolve Zion's game. So with that being said, Bucks by 16.
16! Goddamn. Yeah, that's totally fair, honestly. Wow, that was a lot more than what I had them. I had Milwaukee winning by 10 points, and I thought that was a lot. Clearly, I'm wrong. So I'm gonna have like the most impactful player or players to watch for this game. I think it's definitely going to be Zion. I think Zion's going to be a big one because it's going to be that matchup between him and Giannis. That's going to be fun to watch. And then on the Milwaukee side, I would have to agree. I think it's Chris Middleton. He's going to be fantastic for that team, continuing to be fantastic for that team. John, where are you at with this game?
Yeah, it'll be fun. I want to see like what kind of seismic universal calamity can happen if Zion were to try to dunk on Giannis. That's something I'm interested in personally. Otherwise, the Bucks are really kind of interesting this year in that they get to fly under the radar. No one thinks about them anymore. They're not a big story. We've all kind of like moved on from Giannis, even though he's still playing as good as he ever had. He's still incredible. Chris Middleton has taken a leap forward. And I think I like what Sam basically said. And like you have Giannis's like 28 points per game and everything to like the best way to strat that is just like Giannis is the one who gets it close leading into the fourth quarter. Chris Middleton's your closer, and that's just like the best way for them to do it. And when they get Drew Holiday back, that'll be even better. Like, they're just they're a good team, and the Pelicans have a lot of fun young talent. I still think like Lonzo Ball has been actually really good lately. He's actually been really solid. I'm very happy for him, frankly. And Zion still doesn't really play much defense. He's a little better now, but still not very good. Offensively, still like a one of one. But I don't know, man. I still think that the Bucks are going to win this one for sure. And if they don't win, that's pretty embarrassing for them. So
that's totally fair. Kevin, I have a science question for you. If Zion were to dunk his hardest over Giannis, do you think that would like break Giannis's body, or are we seeing like black hole? Like, what are we talking here?
I think it's more of he induces a coma state into Giannis. Giannis just goes into a coma and doesn't wake up for a few weeks. Just is completely unconscious.
Physics,
yeah,
right there.
Obviously, I know science. Listen. Getting a little more serious now. I think y'all are vastly underestimating the Pelicans. I mean, looking back just like 3 weeks, the Pelicans beat the Bucks by 5 points.
Oh wow!
131 points to 126. I'm just saying they can score against this team pretty effectively. I think the big question mark for me is, are they going to have Steven Adams healthy again? He was questionable tonight and he's out tonight, but I'm not sure what his timetable is to return. If they can get him for that game too, I think that's going to be a big help. Because like, I don't know, Bucks don't have like classical like rebounding big men. Like Giannis is the rebounder of the Bucks team. So if you can have some big guy under the basket getting rebounds for your team, that just means you have so many like second chance points and things like that, where you can throw it to Lonzo, who throws it to Zion for a dunk. I think that is how the Pelicans win, is by getting a lot of the second chance points, because they're not good in general. But so if they get more chances to score than the Bucks, they're gonna do significantly better. I think Zion obviously has to show up. Lonzo has been doing great, like John said. I really like what I'm seeing from him. At least compared to earlier in the season. Brandon Ingram is kind of a bum, but I like the of him versus Middleton. I think will be interesting, and if he can even remotely win that matchup, I think the Pelicans are in a good spot. I think y'all are vastly underestimating them. I have the Pelicans by 2.
Okay. So as a science man, you mentioned Steven Adams. Not really somebody that I thought that would ever be mentioned for an impact player of this game, but I respect it. I respect your views.
I don't at all.
Sam doesn't respect you at all. So there's your hype man right there, Kevin. He hasn't been hyping you up very often, has he?
He called me on the group chat. We done.
That is correct. I am the new hype man for Kevin, apparently. This is a very weird backwards multiverse that we have stepped into. I should not be a hype man for anybody, especially not for Kevin. That has never been my forte. But here we are. We're in backwards world. Thank you so much for that, Sam. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. This has been the Deep 3 Pod, and I know that we've been gone for a while, but you'll be seeing us a lot more consistently, hopefully. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your day. You guys can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at the Deep 3 Pod, and see our fire memes that Kevin has been posting. He does a fantastic job. God, there it is again. There's me hyping him up again. I can't do this. You can't do this, Matt. You can't do this. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Have a good night. Peace.
I'm the greatest big man alive.